Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Naruto walked down the streets of Konoha, his usual exuberance and carefree aura replaced by an intense focus as he recounted the events of his run-in with the three Sunagaku genin. His pink-haired teammate, Sakura, had been attempting to attack Konohamaru, the grandson of the Sandaime, for saying some rather unflattering things about her. He and Konohamaru's two friends, Moegi and Udon, had followed after them in the hopes of stopping Sakura before things got out of hand. Unfortunately, that's exactly what happened when Konohamaru, not paying any attention to where he was going, ran into the Suna genin Kankuro. Sakura's attempts at placating the foreign genin had fallen on deaf ears as Kankuro tried to punch Konohamaru, only for Naruto's other teammate, Sasuke, to stop him with a pebble. That ego of his is really starting to give him a swelled head, thought Naruto with a small chuckle, startling several nearby villagers who had been shying away from the blonde because of the unusually cold aura around him. Although, I need to start keeping a closer eye on him. Ever since we returned from Nami his attitude has become even colder than before. He's so rattled at the thought that there are people our age out there who are actually stronger than him, that it won't be long before he does something stupid and becomes a risk to everyone around him. Putting the topic of his unstable teammate aside, Naruto's thoughts turned to what the blonde Suna Kunoichi had told them. Despite his enthusiastic outburst that he should enter the exams, he knew that the only way to enter was as a team, and they would only be permitted if their sensei nominated them to participate. And if he was honest with himself, Team 7 was nowhere near ready to partake in the exams as they were. Sakura was almost completely useless as a kunoichi, not deserving of her title as the top kunoichi of their graduating class. Sure, the girl was book smart, but those smarts would only get her so far before her complete lack of battle prowess caught up to her and she found herself in a situation that she couldn't get out of. Sometimes he wondered if that was what Sakura was hoping for, that she would be some kind of damsel in distress and that Sasuke would come and save her as her knight in shining armor, not exactly the image a shinobi wants. She, along with almost every other girl in their graduating class, whether they passed or not, was nothing more than an obsessed fangirl for the king of all emos, Sasuke Uchiha. Sasuke himself wasn't any better than Sakura, and in some ways he was even worse. While the young Uchiha did indeed have a great amount of skill for their age, the fact of the matter was, like Sakura, he didn't have the proper mindset to be a shinobi. Whereas Sakura was a useless fangirl, Sasuke was an unstable, spoiled emo with both a superiority and inferiority complex. Out of the three of them, Sasuke was the least ready for the Chūnin exams, at least in terms of mentality. With the number of skilled ninja that were bound to be there, their new friends from Suna included, Sasuke's ego would take a beating at the thought of so many other people being on his skill level, or possibly even higher skill levels. Combine that with his inferiority complex, and you get a mixture that our young hero would rather not dwell on. As for Naruto himself, in terms of skill, most would say that he shouldn't even be a genin because of his apparent lack of any skill besides spamming clones. His taijutsu was horrendous, with no set style at all. His genjutsu didn't even exist with his horrible chakra control, and besides his shadow clone jutsu, he had no ninjutsu at his disposal. While in terms of mental ability, it was surprising to many that he even knew how to care for himself. But that was the Naruto the public knew, the one he was more than willing to let everyone see, the one he created to protect himself. Hokage Tower Meeting Chamber. You have all been assembled for only one reason, said the Sandaime Hokage to the gathered group of Junin and Chūnin before him. Leaning back into his cushioned chair, the veteran shinobi looked over the assembled ninja. Most of them were wearing the dark green flak jacket that signified they were Junins, but there was a small cluster of lighter green flak jackets amongst the group, the Chūnin instructors from the academy. Taking a long draw from his pipe, the aged Kage blew out a small cloud of smoke. It should be obvious by the members here. So it's already that time, trailed Kakashi in his usual laid-back manner. This was not the first time he had been present at one of these meetings, but it was the first time where he would be asked if any of his genin were ready to be nominated. Behind him, Genma Shiranui, a special Chūnin and an elite bodyguard to the Hokage, was chewing on his trademark Senbon. It's already been reported to the other countries, I've seen many of their genin already in the village. So when does it begin? It will begin in a week, said the Hokage as he watched his favorite blonde genin walking through the village with his crystal ball. Something is different about young Naruto today. As he continued to ponder on the rather un-Naruto-like attitude his surrogate grandson seemed to have about him, the image of the blonde genin vanished as he entered his rundown apartment. The Hokage mentally sighed as he watched the image fade. The same thing had been happening for the past 4 years, almost as if something, or someone, was blocking his telescope jutsu. Dismissing the thoughts concerning his surrogate grandson, the Sandaime lifted his head and saw that many of the assembled ninja were mumbling to one another. For the sake of those who do not know, I will announce it properly. 7 days from now, on the first day of the 7th moon, the Chūnin selection exam will commence. The only people who showed any kind of reaction to the news were a few of the younger, less experienced Chūnin from the academy. Now on to the nominations, we'll begin with those who are watching over our newest crop of genin. Knowing that was their cue, Kakashi and his fellow Chūnin stepped forward in front of the assembled group, and stood before their leader. Kakashi, Kurenai and Asuma, are there any of your genin that you feel are ready to enter this Chūnin selection exam? Towards the back of the crowd of ninja, Iruka furrowed his brow in confusion. Hokage-sama doesn't need to ask them, the 9 of them aren't ready yet. Kakashi, you may start, said the Hokage. Many of the ninja in the room thought that Kakashi wasn't going to nominate his team. Hell, some of them were still reeling from the shock of Kakashi actually passing a team and becoming a sensei. Many were surprised when Kakashi raised his right hand and formed a half-ram seal, but his words nearly gave them a heart attack. I lead Team 7, Sasuke Uchiha, Naruto Uzumaki and Sakura Haruno. Now I, Kakashi Hatake, nominate all 3 of these genin to take the Chūnin selection exam. The Hokage smirked slightly at the nomination. He had a strong suspicion that Kakashi would nominate his team after his report of their little adventure in Nami no Kuni. Iruka's eyes widened as he listened to Kakashi's nomination and he couldn't stop from letting out a startled, "What?" Kurenai formed the same seal as Kakashi and made her nomination. Team 8, Hinata Hyuga, Kiba Inuzuka and Shino Aburame. I, Kurenai Uehi, nominate all 3 of them to partake in the Chūnin selection exam. Asuma already had the seal formed when Kurenai finished. My team is number 10, Ino Yamanaka, Shikamaru Nara and Choji Akamichi. I, Asuma Sarutobi, nominate all 3 of my students to take the Chūnin selection exam. A shocked silence followed the 3 Chūnin's nominations. This was first time in over 5 years that a rookie genin team had been nominated to the exams, and the first time since the reign of the Nadaime Hokage, that all of the rookie teams were going to take part. Hold on, shouted Iruka as he pushed his way to the front of the group. What is it, Iruka? Asked the Hokage, already knowing what had gotten the Chūnin instructor so riled up. Hokage-sama, I may be speaking out of place, but all of the 9 names just given were students of mine at the academy. I know that all of them are very talented, but it is too early for them to be taking these exams. They have all only been genin for a few short months, they need more experience. I can't understand the Chūnin's reasoning for nominating the 9 of them. You forgot that I became a Chūnin when I was 6 years younger than Naruto, said Kakashi as he turned to face the Chūnin. Naruto is not the same as you. The academy instructor all but yelled at the masked Chūnin. Are you trying to destroy these kids? The Chūnin exam is. I can understand your feelings on the matter, Iruka. It must be upsetting to you, but. Kakashi, stop already, said Kurenai, not liking the tone her fellow Chūnin was using. Stay out of this, Kurenai. Iruka needs to understand that they are no longer students in his care, they are soldiers under my command. Uruka ground his teeth together as he glared at the famed copy ninja, knowing that there was not much else he could do at this point. Deciding to break the tension that had enveloped the room, the Hokage attempted to get the meeting back on track. Now that we have heard from the senseis of our rookie genin, are there any others who wish to nominate their genin for the exams? A few of the other Chūnin, most of them senseis for teams that had been genin for a couple of years, stepped forward to make nominations, but everyone's attention was drawn to a figure dressed in almost all green as he stepped forward and stood by Kakashi. I lead last year's Team 9, Neji Hyuga, Rock Lee and Tenten. I, Might Guy, hereby nominate all of my youthful students take part in the Chūnin selection exams. Said the spandex-wearing Chūnin, ending with his signature, nice guy, pose, complete with sparkling teeth. Turning to his self-proclaimed, eternal rival, the master taijutsu user's tone became more serious. Kakashi, my eternal rival, are you certain your youthful genin are ready for a challenge such as the Chūnin exams? I myself held my team back for a year to hone their skills so that they would be better prepared for what these exams will bring. Kakashi looked up from reading his favorite orange book, ignoring the glares he was getting from the kunoichis present. Huh, you say something, guy? Ah, curse you, Kakashi. You and your hip attitude. Everyone's sweat dropped as they watched the antics of the two renowned Chūnin. Anyway, said Kakashi, putting his nose back into his favorite piece of porn, what I do with my team is none of your concern. Besides, who are you to judge my students' skill when you haven't even seen them in action? Before Guy had a chance to respond, the voice of the Hokage interrupted him. Enough, now if there are no other nominations for the exams, then I officially call this meeting to a close. Standing from his cushioned chair, the Sandaime vanished in a shunshin, quickly followed by the assembled group of ninja. Had any of them stayed for a few seconds more, they would have noticed a shadowed figure appear in a darkened corner of the room before silently disappearing. This ought to be interesting. I wonder how Naruto will take the news. Naruto's apartment. Sitting on his bed in the lotus position, Naruto's eyes were closed as an aura of calm settled over the normally hyperactive boy. Now that he had a chance to think in peace, the blonde shinobi focused his thoughts on the one thing, or person in this case, that had been troubling him, Gaara no Sabaku. Though it may come as a surprise to many, Naruto was very skilled in the art of reading things, both human and creature. They may have only been face to face for a few short minutes, but that was all the time Naruto needed to get a good feeling for the other boy's state of mind. He knew from first-hand experience that the dark and murderous aura the boy projected was nothing more than a defense mechanism he used to protect himself. But what he was protecting himself from, Naruto did not know. That, however, was not the reason the redhead troubled Naruto so badly. What troubled him was the chakra the boy exuded. The young shinobi's chakra was thick with uncontrolled bloodlust. Despite the falseness of his aura, there was nothing false about the power and thirst for blood his chakra created. It was a feeling Naruto was all too familiar with. Being what he was, it was easy for him to identify the source of the young shinobi's power, a biju. It was the only logical explanation Naruto could think of, and one that caused a chill to run down his spine. He understood how the boy must have been treated for him to turn out the way he did, as there was a time when he had almost succumbed to the same fate. If it were not for the Sandaime Hokage and his true sensei, he had no doubt that he may have turned out just as Gaara had. His morbid thoughts were interrupted as he felt a very familiar presence appear on the far side of his room. Barely cracking one eye open, Naruto glanced at the newcomer before returning to his meditation. Is something wrong, sensei? It's rare for you to come to my humble abode. A deep, throaty chuckle escaped the man's lips as he answered, no, nothing's wrong. I just thought I'd drop by and let you know that Kakashi has nominated you and your team for the upcoming Chūnin exams. So he really did decide to nominate us, huh? Heaving a resigned sigh, the blonde opened his eyes fully and looked over at his sensei. I suppose it was to be expected, though I had hoped he wouldn't. As a team we are simply not ready for this. That may be, said the man as he stepped out of the shadows, revealing his rather tall frame and long spiky white hair, but perhaps these exams can serve as the catalyst to help your team reach its full potential. Maybe, mumbled Naruto, but the only way that could happen is if Sasuke can get past his insecurities and if Sakura actually starts taking her career as a kunoichi seriously. And you and I both know that the possibility of either of those happening, let alone both, is slim to none. Despite the unlikeliness of it actually happening, Naruto couldn't help but hope that his sensei was right, and that the exams would help to bring them together. Though he had a feeling that they could just as easily cause the rifts in Team 7 to only get larger. I know that Naruto, said the white-haired man. In all honesty, the blonde genin's situation was far too reminiscent to his situation with his former teammates for his liking, and he would do anything to prevent his apprentice from going through that pain. Naruto, I've told you on more than one occasion that your team is almost exactly like mine used to be. I understand how frustrating it can be hoping that your teammates will get past their demons and truly learn to work with you. But I am telling you now, don't make the same mistake I did and foolishly hope that things will work themselves out. If you truly wish for your team to become what I know it can become, you will have to take matters into your own hands. And what do you propose I do, Jiraiya-sensei? Asked Naruto with a little heat. I've tried numerous times to approach them about helping them, and every single time they brush me off as an annoying, loud-mouthed idiot that doesn't understand anything about them. There's nothing else I can do without them getting past their insecurities first. Yes, there is, said Jiraiya after a long moment of thought. There is one thing you have yet to try, and though you may not like it, it has the best chance of success. Naruto narrowed his eyes in confusion, prompting his sensei to elaborate. If the two of them won't listen to Naruto Uzumaki, dead last of the academy, said Blonde's eyes widened slightly as he realized where Jiraiya was going, then perhaps they will listen to Naruto Namikaze, son of the Yondaime Hokage and apprentice to Jiraiya of the Sannin. Are you serious, sensei? Said Naruto in a near whisper. Are you sure it's a good idea to tell them? What about my father's enemies? Won't they try and make a move against me when word about my heritage gets out? They most likely will, relented Jiraiya, but despite that mask you wear, we both know you have the skills to go head to head with most Chūnins out there. Naruto absently nodded as he was still recovering from the shock of Jiraiya claiming it was time he took on his true name and mantle. While it may indeed help with the situation concerning his teammates, letting this information come to light had many more consequences and repercussions as well. How would the villagers react? Would the revelation make even a few of them look past their hatred of him and recognize him for what he really was? Or would they deny it vehemently and hate him that much more for trying to take his father's, their hero's, name? His inner musings were stopped by a firm hand being placed on his shoulder. Looking up into the eyes of his godfather, Naruto saw that the man had a knowing smile playing across his features. I know this is a big decision for you to make, Naruto, and you're worried about the repercussions that will undoubtedly come from it. But remember, just because you're revealing this information to your team doesn't mean that you have to tell the rest of the village about it. Let this serve as the first true test to see if your team truly deserves your trust and friendship. Reveal a little of your skills to get their attention, and then tell them what you need to tell them and swear them to secrecy concerning it. We can deal with the rest of the village in due time, said Jiraiya with a reassuring squeeze to his student's shoulder. Knowing the blonde needed some time to think, Jiraiya released his shoulder and moved towards the shadows he appeared from. I'll be staying in the village for the duration of the exams and a little while afterward. If you need to talk, you know how to find me. With that parting statement, the toad sage walked into the shadows and vanished in a silent shunshin. Naruto closed his eyes, regaining his meditation as he mulled over what his godfather had said. The idea had merit, that he would willingly admit, but would it truly work? Could revealing who he truly was and what he was truly capable of really help to bring them together? Even if Jiraiya believed it would, as a shinobi, he had to look at all of the possibilities that could come from his decisions. While these revelations could potentially work, they could also prove disastrous. Was he willing to risk pushing Sasuke, and by extension Sakura, away even further by showing them that he was stronger than he seemed? With a soft chuckle, Naruto delved deeper into his meditation, his mind clearing as he reached his decision. One that would drastically change not only his life, but the lives of everyone he knew. Training Ground 7 the next morning. Sasuke Uchiha was annoyed. First, his attempt at learning another fire technique this morning ended in failure, and now he had the unfortunate luck of running into Sakura on his way to a team meeting, and the pink-haired girl wouldn't shut up or stop asking him for dates. Thankfully, they weren't far from the training ground, so he could start practicing his newest jutsu again, and Sakura would go sit on the sidelines watching him like she always did, giving him at least some peace and quiet for a few hours. That plan was put on hold as they entered the training grounds to a very unusual sight. Naruto was there, though that wasn't very unusual. The blonde shinobi was always the first one to arrive, his apartment being relatively close by. No, what was unusual was the fact that the blonde was sitting on top of the center training post in the clearing, apparently meditating. Sasuke's eyebrows rose at the sight, a clear sign that he was surprised at the behavior of the normally loud-mouthed ninja. Sakura likewise was surprised at the out-of-character behavior of her teammate. Usually the orange-wearing genin would start pestering her for dates the second he saw her, or start challenging Sasuke to prove that he was better than the dark-haired teen. Slowly approaching her teammate, Sakura tried to get his attention. "Naruto, is everything okay?" she asked, not entirely sure if she liked this new side of the blonde or not. Though she would never admit it to anyone, she actually liked it when he asked her for dates. It made her feel more confident about herself that someone, even if they were as annoying as Naruto, thought she was attractive and would openly express their feelings for her. The blonde didn't answer for a few minutes, and that caught even Sasuke's full attention. That Naruto would seemingly ignore Sakura of all people for any amount of time was not a good sign. Thankfully, to both his teammates' hidden relief, Naruto eventually answered, though his voice wasn't the loud, grating at times, noise they had come to expect from the blonde. "Get what training you can in before Kakashi gets here, because once he does we all have much to discuss." The tone of finality in the blonde's voice caught the other two genin completely off guard, but then what he said finally sank in. What the hell could Naruto want to talk about that could be important enough to cause this sudden change in the blonde's personality? Wary of what was to come, the two remaining genin of Team 7 decided to heed their teammates' advice for once. Sasuke moved a couple of yards away and began to practice with his jutsu again, while Sakura, surprisingly, went to a tree nearby and began to use her chakra to walk up and down the trunk like they had seen Kakashi do when he first showed them the exercise. An hour later, Naruto's voice broke the silence that had enveloped the three genin. "Get out here, Kakashi, now is not the time for your dramatics." Sasuke and Sakura, who had stopped training a few minutes ago, looked at the still meditating blonde in confusion before a rustle of leaves alerted them to the arrival of their sensei. Eyes widening in surprise, the two turned to see Kakashi a few yards away from them, for once not reading his signature smut book. Kakashi himself had his one visible eyebrow raised in surprise that he had been noticed, let alone by Naruto of all people. Though he wasn't truly trying to conceal his presence, for a genin to notice a hidden Chūnin was no small feat. Deciding to deal with the change in his blonde student later, Kakashi prepared to tell the three genin about the Chūnin exams, only to stop short as Naruto spoke up. "Before you begin, Kakashi, there is something that all of us need to discuss." Not giving his sensei or teammates a chance to ask the question they all wanted to ask, Naruto pulled a pre-made seal tag out of his hip pouch. Throwing the piece of paper at the ground a few yards away, Naruto formed the seal of the tiger and whispered, "Guardian of Silence, Fuin." Immediately, the seal tag began to glow a soft blue before a dome of chakra spread across the field, invisible to all who did not possess a dojutsu. Opening his eyes, Naruto jumped down from his place on the training post, an unusually serious expression on his normally cheerful face. For the first time since arriving, everyone got a good look at the blonde Jinchuriki, and only now did they realize the change in his attire. Gone was the hideous orange jumpsuit he was known for, and in its place was clothing befitting a true shinobi. Black cargo pants tucked into mesh armor around his shins with black shinobi sandals covering his feet. A deep blood red, sleeveless shirt with a black uzumaki swirl on the back over a short-sleeved, skin-tight, mesh armor shirt covered his torso, and black bandages wrapped around his forearms. He had a shuriken holster attached to both of his thighs and 2 hip pouches on the back of his pants. He had changed his headband's cloth from blue to black with longer ends that reached his shoulders, and oddly enough, he also had 2 medium-sized black scrolls with red edges attached to his lower back, just above his hip pouches. Snapping out of his momentary funk, Kakashi spoke up, "Well, Naruto, I must admit that you certainly live up to your title as the #1 unpredictable ninja. I like the new look, it suits you, but I have to ask, since when have you been able to perform Fuinjutsu? It's one of the most obscure arts known in the ninja world, not something one learns from a scroll or text on their own." Naruto smirked at the suspicious undertone in his sensei's voice. He knew that his little display would garner suspicion from the Chūnin. In fact, he was counting on it. "You're right, Kakashi," he said with his smirk widening as he watched his supposed sensei's hand twitch at the lack of sensei to his name. "It's not something one usually learns on their own, and I am no exception to that rule. My real sensei, the one who has trained me since I was 8 years old, taught me the art." "Real sensei? And who exactly would that be, Naruto?" asked Kakashi, losing all pretense of hiding his suspicions and letting his right hand slip into his hip pouch. "My godfather," said the blonde, his smirk almost splitting his face as he watched the 3 remaining members of Team 7's eyes widen in complete surprise. "Godfather?" questioned Sakura, the statement finally managing to knock her and Sasuke out of their stupors. "I thought you were a clanless orphan," she asked before she remembered his reaction to people making assumptions about his life in Nami, and she covered her mouth. Knowing how he was likely to react to the question, the pink-haired girl immediately tried to apologize. "Oh my god, Naruto, I'm so sorry." A dry, mirthless chuckle escaped the blonde, a sound that caused even Sasuke to shudder slightly. "Don't worry about it, Sakura. It means a lot to me that you care enough to even attempt to apologize for something like that." Sakura attempted to smile at the blonde's admission, but it slipped when she realized that he hadn't said her name with the usual chan suffix. "But to answer your question, I am an orphan, but that doesn't mean that I don't have people out there who care about me. As for being clanless, well, that's one of the things I am going to tell you." Kakashi's mind quickly made the connection in the blonde's words. "You know who your parents are," he said in a soft voice, knowing exactly who Naruto's parents were. Finally, the silver-haired Chūnin had a chance to quit living a lie. He finally had a chance to be the sensei he always wanted to be, not the one the council and elders forced him to be. He would be the first to admit that he was a lousy sensei, not only to Naruto, but also to Sasuke and Sakura as well. The council had blackmailed him into focusing solely on Sasuke's, and to a lesser extent, Sakura's training, but to completely ignore Naruto so as to keep him weak. It tore him up inside that he was effectively being told to leave Naruto to the vultures without any formal training to defend himself. Though it only added to his shame, he had done the absolute bare minimum in regards to training Sasuke and Sakura, and lying to the council about their progress. But now, he had a chance to truly train his team the way he wanted to train them. Even if the council tried to deny the boy his heritage, with the backing of the Hokage, and the boy's mysterious godfather, he could tell the council to, quite literally, piss off and quit interfering with his team. Sasuke's thoughts were a blur as he had come to a similar conclusion as Kakashi. If he was interpreting what Naruto had said correctly, then it meant that he and his blonde teammate had backgrounds that were even more similar than he first suspected. Ever since he learned a little of Naruto's past during their mission in Nami no Kuni, his respect for the blonde had steadily grown. He understood the pain of loneliness that he had been forced into ever since Itachi had murdered their clan. That alone allowed them to understand each other on level that no one else could ever hope to. But if Naruto truly was from a clan, then maybe, just maybe, he could finally have someone he could actually relate to, someone who could actually see him for him, not his name, someone he could consider a brother. However, began the blonde, before I tell you all anything, I want you to swear on your honor as ninja of Konoha, that you will never reveal what I am about to tell you without my express consent. Kakashi understood immediately why the blonde was asking for such an oath, and without a moment's hesitation, he swore himself to secrecy. Sasuke and Sakura knew from the academy that swearing an oath on one's honor as a shinobi was like swearing an oath to the Hokage, absolute, and to break such an oath was one of the severest crimes a shinobi could commit. Though they hesitated for a moment, their curiosity about what had changed in their teammate won out and they swore their oaths as well. Good. Though he remained serious on the outside, he was internally relieved that they agreed to swear the oaths. It showed that they were at least loyal enough to him to not willingly betray his trust. Now, I know this is going to be hard for you all to believe, particularly you two, he said looking pointedly at Sasuke and Sakura, but know that I will never lie to you about matters such as this. Now, my mother was Kushina Uzumaki, a skilled kunoichi whose clan hailed from Uzu no Kuni. My father though was born in Konoha and he was orphaned at a young age, the same as I was. His name was Minato Namikaze, the Yondaime Hokage. A pregnant pause answered Naruto's declaration as his team fully processed the information they had been given. Kakashi was barely restraining himself from shouting out in happiness, a scene that would have been far too reminiscent of those of his so-called eternal rival. He may have known who Naruto's parents were, but knowing and hearing it from the boy himself were two completely different feelings. The knowledge of knowing who Naruto's parents were, yet being unable to tell the boy had been eating away at him since his days in Anbu. But now he no longer had to carry that burden, he was free of its crushing weight and with his new freedom, he was going to do things his way, the council be damned. If it was not for the sudden 180 their teammate's personality had taken, and the fact that he was treating this with the level of seriousness he was, Sasuke and Sakura would have most likely laughed at the idea of Naruto being the son of the Yondaime Hokage. But the fact that Kakashi, who was known as the prodigal student of the Yondaime, didn't try and deny the claim caused them to bite their tongues. That Naruto wasn't running around the village bragging to anyone about this news only reiterated how serious the matter was and helped to give the claim more weight in their minds. Just as Naruto was beginning to think that Jiraiya might have been wrong, Sasuke broke him out of his thoughts. Are you serious, Naruto? The fact that Sasuke actually addressed him by his name threw Naruto for a slight lope, while managing to bring Kakashi and Sakura out of their temporary stupors. Yes, Sasuke, dead serious, said Naruto, his hopes rising slightly. My godfather had a friend of his run a blood test so that when the time came for me to claim my true name, we had the tests to prevent anyone from denying me my birthright. Sasuke then did something none of them had ever seen before, he smiled. A true, genuine smile adorned the last Uchiha's face as he walked up to his stunned teammate and clasped his shoulder, conveying his support to the blonde genin. Though we both came from different upbringings, our histories are almost identical to each other. Know that even if those jackasses on the council don't support your claim, I do. A smile of his own forming, Naruto clasped Sasuke's shoulder as well, the tentative bonds of brotherhood between the two shinobi strengthening. A few feet away, a proud smile could be seen underneath the mask of the copy ninja as he watched his two students. They finally understand what it truly means to be teammates, brothers in arms. Now if only Sakura can get over her childish crush on Sasuke. Yeah, Sasuke-kun's right, said the resident pinkett of Team 7, "No matter what happens, we'll always support you, Naruto." This statement caused all of the males present to inwardly sigh. Even in a situation as serious and emotional as this, she still manages to convey her undying support for the last Uchiha. Though he appreciated the show of support, no matter how influenced it may have seemed, Naruto knew that he had to straighten Sakura out or the girl was going to end up getting herself killed. "Sakura," he said, looking the girl straight in the eye, "think very carefully about how you answer this. Do you truly mean what you are saying, or are you only doing it because of Sasuke?" Just as the young kunoichi was about to say of course she meant it, a stern glare from not only Naruto, but Sasuke and Kakashi as well stopped her short. Looking at the ground, Sakura contemplated if she really did mean what she had said. For so long she had been supporting Sasuke and his decisions, not really thinking things through on her own. So when Sasuke said he would support Naruto, her mind automatically agreed with him and said she would as well, not even considering her own feelings on the matter. But now that she truly thought about it, she did mean what she had said. She may have been annoyed by Naruto's old antics, just like everyone else in the village, but he had proven his loyalty and trust in her numerous times. The least she could do was prove that she was worthy of that trust. Looking up into the eyes of her blonde teammate, a fierce determination could be seen burning in her emerald orbs. "I mean it, Naruto, I will always support you, that's what teammates are for, aren't they?" Naruto gave a small smirk in response as he waved the last member of Team 7 over. Once she reached them, Naruto placed his other hand on Sakura's shoulder as well. "Thank you, Sakura, and you're right, that is what teammates are for." Gaining a small playful smile, Sakura flipped her hair a little. "Of course I'm right, I was the top kunoichi at the academy." Even Sasuke couldn't help but smirk at the pinkett's comment. He could admit that when Sakura wasn't obsessing over him, she was actually a decent person to be around. Kakashi's smile returned in full force as his team seemed to have finally come together, even if it was just a little. His smile turned into a frown as his mind returned to the reason he had called the team meeting. Now that they have bonded more as a team, their chances in the exams just went up a notch, but in terms of skill, only Sasuke and Naruto are truly ready for the second and third stages of the exams. "I'll have to up their training for the next week to try and get them all up to par and get them used to working with the new skills each of them will develop as well." "Alright team." The three genin turned towards Kakashi, each of them immediately becoming serious when they saw their sensei's expression. "My original plan for this meeting was to inform you all that I had nominated you guys for the Chūnin exams being held in a week and let you guys rest up and prepare for a week on your own." Sasuke and Sakura's eyebrows rose in surprise, but Naruto retained his serious expression, something Kakashi wasn't completely surprised by. But now that plan has changed. With Naruto's sudden change in abilities, Sasuke and Sakura need time to get used to working with this new you. Also, Sasuke, I will be helping you hone your ability with your Sharingan, and Sakura, I'll have you working on upping your chakra reserves, improve your taijutsu, and maybe get you started on learning the basics of medical ninjutsu. For now though, we'll start with another chakra control exercise, water walking. "I already know this exercise, Kakashi-sensei," Naruto said, feeling that Kakashi had earned his proper title with what he had planned for them. "If you want, I can work with Sasuke and Sakura to get them up to speed on it while you go and get some scrolls of medical ninjutsu for Sakura and whatever other supplies you'll need to help train us." "I had a feeling you would already know the exercise, Naruto," the cycloptic Chūnin said. "Alright, you get those two started while I fetch some supplies, I'll be back in a flash." With that, the copy nin disappeared in poof of smoke, leaving his students to work. Turning towards the river that ran through the training ground, Naruto motioned for his teammates to follow him. As soon as they reached the bank of the river, Sasuke and Sakura stopped but were surprised when Naruto continued to walk and had to stop themselves from openly gaping when he started walking across the surface of the water. Stopping once he reached the center of the river, Naruto turned to see his wide-eyed teammates and smirked. Alright you two, this is the water walking exercise. It's similar to the tree walking, but instead of a fixed amount of chakra, you have to emit a continuous stream of chakra from your feet into the water to remain on the surface. Now normally, I'd let you find out the proper amount of chakra to emit on your own, but we're kind of in a rush, so we're going to cheat a little bit. Sakura, start off by placing a single foot on the water's surface until you feel like you have the chakra amount correct, then step out with the other foot. Keep repeating that process until you feel comfortable enough to walk normally. The lone female nodded in understanding and stepped up the water's edge and placed her right foot on the surface, already emitting her chakra to keep it in place. Sasuke, while Sakura's doing that, use your Sharingan to see how I'm moving my chakra and try and replicate it on your own, but remember, every person's body is different, so the proper amount and how you emit it will be slightly different than mine. Nodding in understanding, the last Uchiha's eyes flickered from black to red as his two-tomo Sharingan appeared. Looking at Naruto's feet, Sasuke saw that he was emitting a constant, yet focused stream of chakra from the soles of his feet. Placing a foot on the water's surface, Sasuke tried to take another step, only for his control to slip slightly and he sank ankle deep in the water. Remembering what Naruto had said about everyone being different, Sasuke increased the amount of chakra slightly and felt his body rise slightly, but not completely out of the water. This was the scene that Kakashi returned to 30 minutes later. Sakura was jogging along the water's surface, in an attempt to use more chakra and help increase her reserves. Sasuke and Naruto were having a small taijutsu bout on the river, forcing Sasuke to split his attention and helping him to get more accustomed to walking on water. That's enough for now team, come over here for a minute. The three genin walked back to their sensei and stood at attention in front of him. Now before we get any further, I'm going to test each of you for your elemental affinity. This will tell us what type of jutsu will be easiest for you to use and which ones you need to train in order to counter. Naruto, I'm assuming your other sensei has already tested you for your affinities, correct? Yeah, I'm a wind and water type, said the blonde, channeling a bit of chakra into the chakra paper he pulled out of his hip pouch. The paper reacted immediately by splitting in half, before both sides darkened and became damp. Two affinities right from the start, impressive, and one offensive and one defensive element as well, a good combination. Now Sasuke, Sakura, channel your chakra into these slips of paper, how it reacts will tell us your natural affinity. Sasuke's paper instantly began to crumple when his chakra came into contact with it, while Sakura's hardened and began to crumble into dirt. Well, this is certainly interesting. Between the three of you, you have access to every single element. Sasuke, it appears your natural affinity is lightning, the same as mine, and Sakura your affinity is earth, one of the strongest defensive elements out there. We'll begin working on the practical application of manipulating your elements tomorrow. Until then, Sasuke, Sakura, you can head home, but make sure you read these scrolls on the theory of lightning and earth manipulation. Naruto, I'm going to need to get a handle on your true level of skill so I can plan out methods on how you all can work together and capitalize on each other's strengths and cover your weaknesses. Sasuke and Sakura took the scrolls Kakashi gave them, but instead of leaving, they walked over to the training posts and sat down, intent on seeing what their teammate was truly capable of. Seeing that his two students weren't planning on moving anytime soon, Kakashi turned to his blonde pupil and was forced to duck under a powerful roundhouse that would have left his ears ringing. Completely caught off guard, Kakashi barely managed to roll away from the follow-up chakra-enhanced punch that left a slight crater on the ground. Kakashi only had a few seconds the gape at the strength, chakra-enhanced or not, that his student had. I may not know how skilled he is, but I know you would be proud of the shinobi your son is on his way to becoming Minato-sensei. He was forced out of his thoughts as Naruto threw a single shuriken at him and formed a few hand seals, causing the single shuriken to multiply into dozens. Though maybe I should have asked him to simply tell me his skills, thought the copy nin as he jumped away from the hail of steel. A week later, training ground 7. Naruto and Sasuke jumped back from each other, only to charge in again and engage in a fierce taijutsu bout. A few yards away, Sakura was dodging multiple shuriken and kunai that were being thrown at her by Kakashi and about 10 clones. Ducking under a roundhouse kick from the last Uchiha, Naruto caught the ankle of the offending appendage and threw the dark-haired teen away. Sasuke flipped in midair and landed on the surface of a tree before dropping back to the ground. "That's enough for now," said the blonde of Team 7 as he checked the position of the sun. "We need to start making our way to the academy. The first part of the exams are about to begin." Sasuke nodded and walked back over the blonde as Sakura and Kakashi finished as well. Once all of them were together, Kakashi began leading them through the streets of the village. In the short week they had spent training, Team 7 had grown in both skill and camaraderie. The copy ninja had ceased with his usual tardiness, arriving at the time he instructed his students to, and the fruits from the extra time together were already showing. Sasuke, while he had not fully mastered his lightning affinity, had already learned the 2 Raiden techniques Kakashi had shown him. Also, the dark-haired genin had made sufficient progress with his Sharingan. He could now trap enemies within a genjutsu with eye contact alone, though that contact had to be maintained for a few seconds to allow the illusions to take hold. Another thing they had worked on were a few of his clan's fire techniques, and Sasuke was proud to say he had added another 2 of those jutsu to his arsenal. It was Sakura though, who truly blossomed over the week. She had finally become to prove herself worthy of the top kunoichi title she earned from the academy. It was tricky in the beginning for her to grasp what Kakashi was teaching her, but they had discovered quickly that she didn't learn through trial and error or natural genius, like her teammates did. Instead, she preferred to study and get a full grasp of understanding from a theoretical point of view, before actually attempting things herself. So to test just how effective this method of learning was for the Pinkett, Kakashi had given her a scroll containing in-depth details on a basic Doden jutsu, the Earth-style wall, and had her memorize everything she could about it before having her perform the technique. The results were astounding. On her first attempt at performing the jutsu, she had managed to raise a wall out of the earth a good 4 feet tall, though it left her considerably drained afterward. With her chosen method of training in hand, Sakura had taken every scroll their sensei gave her and set to memorizing everything she could from them, and when she wasn't reading, she was exercising on the surface of the lake to help increase her reserves. "Well team, this is it," said the silver-haired Chūnin as he glanced over his shoulder. "I want you all to know that no matter how you fare, I'm proud to call you my students." The 3 genin stood that much straighter at the praise their sensei gave them, although, "I have a feeling that you all will do quite well in these exams." "Of course we will," said Naruto. Despite having dropped the mask of the idiot, his old confidence was still present. "I wouldn't be surprised if all of us made Chūnin once this is over." Kakashi chuckled slightly while Sasuke and Sakura nodded in agreement with their teammate. "I'm sure you will. But no matter how this plays out, remember the first thing I taught you guys. Those who ignore the rules are trash," began Sakura. "But those who abandon their comrades," said Sasuke, "are worse than trash," finished Naruto as the team arrived outside of the academy. Despite being the site for the first part of the Chūnin exams, the field around the building was decidedly empty. "Well, this is as far as I go," Kakashi said as he turned to his team and gave them an eye smile. "Now show them all what Team 7 is capable of." "Hi!" chorused the genin as Kakashi disappeared in a cloud of smoke. "Alright, time to put our plan into action." Turning to his pink-haired teammate, Naruto waved his hand to the side. "Sakura, if you would do the honors." "On it," she said as she formed a short chain of seals. Finishing in the ram seal, the images of the 3 genin shimmered slightly as the cloaking genjutsu took effect. Once the illusion had taken hold, the 3 looked exactly as they did before the week began, clothes and all. There, Now let's just hope no one is stupid enough to try and break the illusion. Don't worry, Sakura. If they do, I'll be able to sense their chakra spike before they can finish the process. Both Sasuke and Sakura nodded at their blonde teammate's words. It had surprised them when Naruto revealed that he was a natural sensor-type shinobi, something that wasn't all that common in Konoha. Tell me again why we're hiding our true selves under a genjutsu, said Sasuke, as they made their way into the academy and started heading towards the third floor. Because Sasuke, deception is a ninja's greatest weapon, as we are now people will be more likely to underestimate us, making it that much easier for us to defeat them. I get hiding our skills and abilities, but why hide our appearances? It would be just as effective to have our enemies know to be wary us. I thought we took care of that whole, I must uphold my clan honor thing. Mused Naruto, getting a half-hearted glare from Sasuke. It's not my fault my clan is naturally battle-ready, and I am no different, said the dark-haired genin with a huff. He says that like it's supposed to be a good thing, Naruto whispered to Sakura, getting a giggle out of the pinkett and a scowl from the dark-haired teen. Keep talking, Dobi. One of these days that mouth of yours is going to get you into something you can't get out of. Yeah, whatever, Tem. Alright, you two, that's enough, we have an exam to take, remember? Said Sakura, using a tone one would normally use to scold children, causing the two boys to sulk slightly. Now let's go, I for one don't want to be late, she said as she walked past the two sulking shinobi and started down the hallway. Since when did she become the leader? Whispered Sasuke, causing Naruto to shrug. They both froze though as Sakura turned around and glared at the two of them. What was that, boys? Nothing. The two frightened shinobi said as they kept walking. It didn't take them long to reach the third floor, but when they did, it was to find a large crowd of genin standing in front of a door being blocked by two older genin. Hey, let us in, said a bun-haired girl as she helped who appeared to be her teammate up. Naruto raised an eyebrow and met his teammate's gaze, both of them giving a slight nod. Without so much as a look back, the three members of Team 7 moved to the other side of the hallway and continued on towards their real destination. As the three rookie genin walked off, a white-eyed genin watched with a frown on his face. So that is Team 7, thought the boy upon seeing the Uchiha fan on Sasuke's shirt. For a team that's being trained by the famous copy ninja Kakashi, they don't appear to be all that strong. It wouldn't matter anyway, fate has already determined the outcome of these exams. Turning back to his own team, he gestured for them to take another route towards the exam room. It didn't take long for the disguised Team 7 to reach the actual exam room, but once they did, they were blasted with killing intent from the hundreds of genin already in the room. Naruto and Sasuke didn't show any signs of being affected by the mass amounts of killing intent, Naruto because part of his training with Jiraiya was to increase his tolerance to the feeling, and Sasuke because of his pride, though he shivered slightly on the inside. Sakura, however, began to shake a little bit, not having much experience fighting off the feeling. A reassuring glance from her blonde teammate eased her nerves and helped her to get a hold of herself again. The team was just about to move to an unoccupied corner when a very loud squeal sounded behind them. Before any of them had a chance to blink, a blonde blur collided with Sasuke's back, nearly knocking him to the ground. Oh, Sasuke-kun, I've been waiting for you to show up. Gushed Ino as she rubbed her cheek against Sasuke's, much to the Uchiha's dismay. I was beginning to think your sensei didn't let you enter, though that would probably be because of forehead and the dobi over there. Sakura bristled at the insult to her skills as a kunoichi, but surprisingly, she wasn't that bothered about Ino rubbing up against Sasuke, though that irked her in different way than it had before. Wow, I guess those sessions with Anko had more of an impact than I first thought. Ino pig, I would get off Sasuke if I were you, I don't think he's enjoying having your fat weighing him down. Ino's face went red at the jab to her figure, but then her mind fully processed what Sakura had said, or to be more precise, what she hadn't. She didn't say Sasuke's name with the Kun. Suffix. What the hell happened to her? Has she given up on trying to get Sasuke-kun to love her? Not liking being out of the loop, Ino voiced her thoughts to her former friend and rival. What's with you, Sakura? Why did you say Sasuke instead of Sasuke-kun? Have you given up on trying to win him over? Though she was happy that she had one less competitor for the heart of her crush, she was a little upset that she had lost the rivalry with her one-time friend. Sakura also felt the loss of the rivalry, but knew she had to try and help her former friend focus on her career as a kunoichi, lest she end up dead before she turned 14. Yes, Ino, I have given up on Sasuke, and so should you. Ino's eyes widened slightly at the bold statement, but Sakura continued undeterred. We're not little girls anymore, Ino, we're kunoichi and we need to start acting like it. I'm not saying we can't like someone and try and pursue them, but obsessing over that person to the point where we allow ourselves to become weak is not what we should be doing. If we like someone, then we should hone our skills so that we can live long enough to act on our feelings. I don't know about you, but that's what I'm going to do. I am going to become strong enough so that I can protect the ones I care about and so that I can live a long and prosperous life. Both girls were so intent on the other that neither noticed Sasuke perform a substitution with Naruto. Naruto shot a glare at the Uchiha but sighed and let it go. If he had to deal with fangirls as much as Sasuke did, he probably would have done the same. So instead he turned his attention towards his fellow blonde as a look of complete and utter shock took over her features before it slowly morphed into one of far-off thought. Sakura finally noticed that Ino was holding onto Naruto instead of Sasuke and had to fight to keep her laughter under control. She lost that battle the moment she saw her fellow kunoichi unconsciously snuggle deeper into her blonde teammate's back, causing the pinkett to giggle behind her hand. Ino was stunned into silence as she listened to Sakura talk. She had heard a similar speech from her father and mother on many occasions, but there was something about hearing it from her childhood friend that had a larger impact on the blonde kunoichi. Her mind began to wonder as she mulled over her friend's words. She had always thought of herself as a strong and proud kunoichi, but as she thought things over, she began to question her belief in herself. Unconsciously snuggling closer to the body she was holding onto, the blonde kunoichi noticed something that was different from before. That's weird. Sasuke-kun always had a good body, but this body feels so much more defined and warm. I feel like I could just snuggle here all day. Sighing in content, she closed her eyes and snuggled even closer into the back of the person. Naruto's mouth twitched into a small smile as he saw how content Ino was, but he figured he would spare her the endless teasing she was likely to receive should she be found snuggling into him. Ino, I'm glad you're so comfortable, but do you mind getting off? There is still the matter of the Chūnin exams to deal with. He trailed off as the platinum blonde's eyes shot open at the sound of his voice. Snapping her head around to look at the face of the person she was currently snuggling into, Ino saw the deep sapphire pools that were Naruto's eyes looking into her own from a distance of about an inch. For a few seconds the two simply looked at one another, before Ino blushed scarlet and jumped off her fellow blonde's back, just before her teammates walked into the room. So you guys are taking this stupid test too, What a drag, said the lazy voice of Shikamaru Nara. Shikamaru turned to his female teammate and noticed how flustered she looked. What the hell happened to her? The lazy genius brushed it off for the time being as something to do with Sasuke, though he made a note to look into it a little later. Naruto smirked as he looked at his fellow, dead lasts, from the academy. Hey Shikamaru, Choji, you two still watching the clouds and eating instead of training? The Nara genius sighed, but a small smirk could be seen on his face. Yeah, the only reason I'm here is because Ino dragged me here, and my mom would have killed me if I refused to enter. Troublesome women. Choji merely kept on eating his chips, though he managed to get out a short, "Hey Naruto," in between handfuls. What was that, Shikamaru? Asked Ino in a threatening tone, her lazy teammate's comment finally knocking her out of her flustered state. Shikamaru simply shrugged and muttered, "Troublesome," under his breath, much to the Ino's annoyance. "Well, what do you know?" said a boy with a dog on his head and wearing a fur-lined jacket. "Looks like all of this year's rookies are taking the exams. I wonder how far all of us will get." The 6 genin turned to see Team 8 walking up to them. Kiba was wearing a cocky smirk as always, Shino was his usual stoic self, and Hinata looked as shy as ever. Naruto smirked at his fellow genin. "Speak for yourself, dog breath. I don't know what'll happen to you, but I plan on being a Chūnin once this entire ordeal is over." "That is a bold claim, Naruto-san," said Shino with his hands in his pockets. "Many of the genin here are the best that their villages have to offer. Defeating them will be no easy feat." Naruto's smirk never wavered as he glanced over the crowd of assembled genin. Shino's eye narrowed behind his sunglasses as his insects started going crazy, telling him to be wary of the blonde genin. There is something different about him, thought the Aburame heir. The stoic genin wasn't the only one to notice the change in the blonde. Shikamaru's mind was working overtime to try and understand what could make the blonde so confident in himself. He could tell that the confidence the boy held himself with was different from their time at the academy. It wasn't a cocky or arrogant confidence like Kiba, but instead it was that of a person who understood the depth of their skill and power and wasn't afraid to prove it. Hello n Naruto K-kun, stuttered Hinata as she looked at her secret crush. Her face flushed when the blonde looked her in the eye, his patented fox smirk in place. "Hey Hinata, I hope you've been keeping your mud of a teammate in line," he said, causing the Inuzuka heir to growl low in his throat. Hinata looked down and started poking her fingers together as she stuttered out an answer. "You know you guys should really keep it down," said a genin with glasses on. "You are the rookies fresh out of the academy, right?" "And what if we are?" asked Sasuke as he glared at the newcomer. Hey, I'm just trying to help you guys out. Though you might want to keep an eye on those guys over there." He gestured to a team of older genin behind them. They all looked annoyed as they watched the 9 rookies. "They're from a megacure, and they have really short tempers, especially when they're on edge. Not that you guys would know that, after all you're just rookies. So I take it you have taken these exams before, mister," trailed Naruto, fishing for a name. "Oh sorry, my name is Kabuto Yakushi, and yes I have taken these exams before. In fact this one will be my 7th attempt," he finished lamely as he scratched the back of his neck. "So in other words, you suck," said a smirking Kiba while Akamaru barked in agreement with his master. "Or it means that these exams are harder than we first anticipated, Kiba," said Naruto, surprising his fellow rookies, with the exception of his team. "Our sensei always tells us to look underneath the underneath, so to not make the foolish assumption that the way you see things is the way it actually is. Doing that will be your downfall. Although, something doesn't feel right about this guy. His chakra reserves are almost on par with Kakashi Sensei's, and the way he's suppressing it requires a high level of control. Whoever he is, he's no ordinary genin. Anyway," said Kabuto, bringing the attention back to him, "since you guys are rookies, I'll share some of the information I have with you." Reaching into his hip pouch, the older genin brought out a deck of orange cards, all with a green border. "These are ninja info cards. They contain all of the information I have gathered on the exams, including information about specific participants. Even you guys are in here. What about a boy named Gaara no Sabaku of Sunagakure? Do you have any information on him?" asked Sasuke, though it sounded more like a demand than a question. Naruto had told his team of his suspicions about Gaara, except for the fact that he was a Jinchuriki, but Sasuke wanted to see if this boy had information that they didn't. "Of course, is there anyone else you would like some information on?" asked the silver-haired teen as he drew a random card out of the deck. All of the members of Team 7, the Rookie 9, whirled around to see a boy with pupilless white eyes just like Hinata standing with 2 other genin. The girl was wearing a pink Chinese-style shirt and dark green pants with her hair up in 2 buns. The other boy was wearing a full-body green spandex suit with orange leg warmers and his red headband around his waist like a belt. The members of Team 8 and Team 10 each wondered why the boy would want information on Team 7, while the aforementioned team narrowed their eyes at the boy. Before any of them had a chance to voice their curiosity, Kabuto had already drawn the 3 extra cards and placed them next to the card that held Gaara's information. Well then, let's begin with Gaara no Sabaku. The 12 assembled genin turned towards the kneeling genin and watched as he spun the card with his finger before a small poof of smoke covered the card. The smoke cleared to reveal a picture of a red-haired teen with lifeless sea foam green eyes and the kanji for love tattooed on his forehead. Let's see, his mission history is a little vague, but it seems that he has completed 8 C-rank missions and, whoa, a B-rank mission as a genin, very impressive. His teammates are his older siblings surprisingly, Tamari and Kankuro. I don't know who his sensei is, but it says that he was personally chosen by the Cage to lead his children's squad. It's just a rumor, but it's said that he has returned from every mission he has ever been on completely unscathed. All of the genin who had heard the information on the young redhead immediately stiffened. This boy had taken on a B-ranked mission and returned from it without even a single scratch. Just how strong is this guy? Was the general thought process of the genin, with the exception of our favorite blonde hero. Completely unscathed, huh, I have a feeling his Biju had a hand in that, thought the blonde before his eyes refocused on Kabuto. A ninja's mission record is classified information that only the Cage and the higher-ups of a village's military are privy to. How the hell did this guy get that kind of information on someone who isn't even from our village? And if he has that kind of information on a foreigner, his thoughts trailed off as Kabuto revealed the information on the next card. Next up, Sakura Haruno of Konohagakure, said the bespectacled shinobi, mission history is pretty average for a genin. She and her team have completed 20 D-rank missions, and only 2 C ranks, nothing special there. Her teammates are Sasuke Uchiha, the last loyal Uchiha in Konoha, and Naruto Uzumaki, the dead last from the academy. Overall there is nothing special about her, just your average run-of-the-mill genin. Although I do have a note stating that she has begun to study the art of medical ninjutsu, that's something one doesn't always see in a genin. Sakura's eyes narrowed at the silver-haired genin. How the hell does he know I've been studying to become a medic nin? Kakashi-sensei only recently added that information to my kunoichi file, and I haven't told anyone else. Something is definitely not right here. Looking at her teammates, she saw that they too had their eyes narrowed in suspicion as Kabuto prepared the next card of information. Now for her teammate, Sasuke Uchiha, Neji's ears perked up as Kabuto began reading off the information. Mission records are the same as his team, so let's look at his skills. He is proficient in the use of his clan's personal taijutsu style. His skills in genjutsu could use some work, but his proficiency with Kaden techniques is well above average, as to be expected of an Uchiha. Well, this is interesting. It seems that he also has the older genin was cut off as a spike of killing intent came from the last Uchiha. Using the distraction his teammate provided, Naruto swiped Kabuto's entire deck of cards, as well as the ones he had set on the floor. Slipping the deck into his hip pouch, Naruto planned on sending the cards to the Hokage as evidence against the elder genin, but only after making a complete set of copies for himself and his team. Sasuke and Sakura had seen what Naruto had done and smirked themselves. The information on those cards could prove to be invaluable during the exams, and they didn't plan on letting them go to waste. A spike of chakra from the front of the room caught Naruto's attention as he turned just in time to see a large cloud of smoke appear. "Alright, you bitches and bastards, shut up and pay attention," shouted a deep voice from inside the cloud of smoke. Many of the participants jumped in surprise at the sound of the voice, but a small handful retained their composure. The smoke cleared away to reveal a burly man wearing a large black trench coat with a group of Chūnin behind him. "My name is Ibiki Morino, the first proctor of the Chūnin selection exams, and as such I would like to welcome all of you to hell. Naruto smirked as he watched almost every single genin shiver in fear of the scarred Chūnin. So Ibiki the mind sadist is our proctor, huh? This exam just got a whole lot more challenging. Glancing over at Sasuke and Sakura, he saw that while they didn't show any outward signs of being intimidated, their body language spoke otherwise. Guys, he whispered so that only they could hear, don't let him get to you. Ibiki is the head of the torture and interrogation division. He specializes in psychological warfare to extract information from people. So long as you keep your cool and retain a level head, you shouldn't fall for his tricks as easily as others, but you still need to keep your wits about you. He is known as the mind sadist for a reason. The two genin of Team 7 nodded in understanding with their teammates' assessment of things. Everyone's attention was brought back to the burly Chūnin as he began barking out orders. Now everyone is to come forward to receive a number. That number will represent where you will sit for the written exam. Now move it. I'm a busy man and I don't have time to deal with pathetic wannabe ninja. The second the man finished, all of the genin were pretty much tripping over one another in order to get a number and avoid pissing the man off any more than he already was. It only took a few minutes before everyone was assigned a number and had taken their respective seats for the written exam. All of the members of the soon-to-be dubbed Konoha 12 feet were scattered throughout the rows of desks, with Naruto and Hinata being the only ones next to each other. Ibiki stood at the front of the room as the Chūnin sentinels finished passing out the written exams. Once all the papers had been distributed and the sentinels had taken up their positions around the room, the head of the T&I division began the first stage of the Chūnin exams. Now that everyone is ready, we can begin. Before you flip your tests over, there are a few rules that I must explain. First off is that each of you will begin the exam with a full 10 points. Also, this test is based on a subtraction system, meaning you lose a point for every question you get wrong. The second rule, this exam is a team test, so whether you pass or fail is determined by the total number of points you and your teammates have at the end of the hour. Several of the genin paled slightly as the implications set in, but unfortunately for them, Ibiki wasn't quite through. The third and possibly the most important rule, should any of you worthless maggots be caught cheating by the sentinels, you will have 2 points automatically deducted from their score. Now if everyone is ready, you may begin the exam. The sound of shuffling paper filled the room as the rattled genin turned over their tests, only for many of them to panic as they noticed the difficulty of the questions. Oh, and I almost forgot to mention the fourth and final rule for this test: should anyone receive a 0, whether from the sentinels or at the end of the exam, they and their teammates will automatically fail. The temperature in the room dropped significantly as everyone felt the weight of the pressure on their shoulders. Your hour begins now. Good luck, you'll need it. With that said, Ibiki and the sentinels sat back to enjoy the show they were about to be treated to. Naruto narrowed his eyes in concentration as he looked down at his test and read over the first question. This is an advanced cryptogram that requires extensive knowledge of village-to-village codes. There is no way a genin should be able to answer that question. But they should know that no ordinary genin would have the ability to answer this kind of question, so why put it on the test? What are you playing at, Ibiki? Sasuke bit the end of his pencil as he read over the test and came to the conclusion that he couldn't answer any of the questions. Hey, well, isn't this just great? I can't answer a single one of these, he thought with a small shake of his head. The only people who even have a chance at answering any of these questions are people like Sakura. On top of that, what's up with the sentinels watching us? It's almost as if they expect us to cheat, thought both males of Team 7. Sasuke smirked slightly at the intricate trap the proctors had weaved, but pushed that aside as he activated his Sharingan and began scanning the crowd for someone who looked like they knew what they were doing. All around the room, the stronger genin began using different methods to cheat off of the people around them. Kiba and Shino were using their respective animal counterparts to gather answers, while the two Hyugas in the room activated their own dojutsus and began copying from the people around them. Sakura and Shikamaru were using their natural smarts to answer the questions, while Choji's hand moved at the exact same time as Shikamaru's, thanks to the Nara's shadow jutsu. Tenten was using mirrors she had set up beforehand to get the answers and then pass them to Lee. Ino was waiting for Sakura to finish answering the questions before she used her clan's mind jutsu to get the answers from her. So that's your game, Ibiki, thought Naruto. Well, I might as well make my move before the weaker ones start getting caught. Extending his senses, Naruto felt out the chakra levels of everyone in the room. Interesting, it seems that quite a few of the younger genin here are more powerful than some of the veteran genin, not quite sure if that is something to be proud of or worried about. Filing that little piece of information away for later use, Naruto continued searching for a strong chakra signature that felt out of place amongst the sea of genin. Ha! Found you. Looking up from his searching, he glanced at a male genin 2 rows ahead of him. Good job of hiding your sources, Ibiki, though you can't get by me that easily. Now for the tricky part. Forming a half-ram seal under the desk, Naruto placed his right hand over his chest, coating it with his chakra. This one's for you, Mom. Pushing out with his chakra, the blonde created a small chain of chakra from his palm to the paper. Slowly moving the paper off of the desk and along the floor, Naruto maneuvered the paper so that it was near the disguised Chūnin's paper, but still out of sight of everyone else. Using the chakra-coated paper as a medium, the blonde genin extended another small chain of chakra from his paper that connected to the Chūnin's paper. Waiting until the man looked away from his paper, Naruto instantly swapped the two papers, leaving the Chūnin a completely blank test and bringing the completed one back to him. My control is improving, it's almost ready to be battle-tested. The blonde's musings stopped as he watched a team of Kusa genin get kicked out. Guess all I have to do now is wait. The time passed relatively quickly for the blonde, having lost track of time as he silently meditated. Unbeknownst to Naruto, his fellow rookies had taken notice of his strange behavior and were wondering what had caused the shift in his personality, particularly his fellow blonde, Ino. What's up with Naruto? I thought he would have been a nervous wreck the second he found out we would be taking a written test, yet he's as calm as can be. What happened to him? The Naruto I know couldn't sit still for 5 minutes, let alone almost an entire hour. Well, whatever it is, I plan on getting to the bottom of it. Her mind made up, the Yamanaka heiress prepared to use her mind-body switch jutsu before Ibiki's gruff voice stopped her midway through the process. Alright, you brats, pay attention, said Ibiki. 45 minutes have passed, so it is time to announce the 10th question. But before we do, I must explain a few extra rules that are unique to the 10th question. What? Asked a genin from Suna. What do you mean unique rules? I mean that these rules are the ones of desperation, he said with a dark chuckle. Now, the first rule, you must choose whether or not you wish to take the 10th question. Choose, shouted Tamari from the edge of the room. So what happens if we choose not to take the question? What happens then? Ibiki began to chuckle in the back of his throat, a sound that made the genin think they were in the presence of a demon. What happens then? Should you choose not to take the 10th question, your score will be reduced to 0 and you and your team will fail. What kind of bullshit is this? If that's the case, then of course we'll take the question. You didn't let me finish. Should you choose to take the question and you get it wrong, you will be barred from taking the Chūnin exams ever again. An unholy silence enveloped the room for a brief moment as everyone processed what the burly Chūnin had said. That silence was broken by an enraged Kiba standing up and pointing at the scarred Chūnin. What kind of rule is that? There are plenty of guys here who have taken the exams in the past before. Once again Ibiki began to chuckle in the back of his throat, but this time it escalated into a full-blown laugh that had some of the weaker genin ready to run. Then I guess you all are just unlucky. This year I'm making the rules. But just to prove I can be compassionate, I will give you a way out. Those of you who do not feel confident enough in yourselves can choose not to take the question, and can try again next year. The choice is yours. The eerie silence returned as the full scope of the situation made itself known to the competitors. Naruto's eyes remained closed as he continued his meditation, observing the fluctuations in everyone's chakra. Ibiki truly is the best when it comes to psychological warfare. He has almost everyone so rattled that it won't be long before the censor's thoughts trailed off as the person next to him abruptly stood up. I can't do it. I give up. Alright then. Number 50, fail. Number 130 and 111, you fail as well. Almost as if a wall had crumbled, multiple others began dropping out left and right. Throughout it all, Naruto remained silent, observing all the remaining chakra signatures, waiting for someone else to quit as well. His eyes snapped open when he felt the chakra on his right fluctuate. Poor Hinata, she was always a fragile girl, so this kind of mind attack is even harder on her. She's trying to remain brave for her teammates, but the pressure is starting to affect her. Looks like she needs a little boost to make it through this. Calling on the traces of his old personality still in his system, Naruto drew a kunai from his pouch and launched it at the Chūnin, slicing the collar of his jacket. The remaining genin and sentinels looked on in shock as the rookie genin stood off against the seasoned Chūnin. Something you wish to say? Asked Ibiki, covering his surprise at the sudden action. Yeah, don't underestimate me. I am a shinobi, and a shinobi never backs down from a challenge. You can try and scare me off all you want, but as long as I still draw breath, I will never give up. This one is different than the others, are you sure? This decision will affect the rest of your life. Naruto merely smirked and crossed his arms. Those who stray from the path of justice have no courage, but under the wind of a strong leader, cowardice cannot survive. Those were the words of the Yondaime Hokage. My dream is to become the Hokage. If I don't have faith in myself to pass this test, then how can I ask the people to have faith in me to protect and lead them? I will stand by my word, for that is my ninja way. Ibiki watched as the fear and worry left the faces of those still present, replaced by a strong conviction to succeed. This kid is interesting. He seems to have replaced everyone's worries with a strong determination. 78 left, more than I expected. But drawing this out would be pointless. After that little speech, all of them seemed to have grown a backbone. Looking around at the sentinels, he received a nod from each of them. Nodding himself, he looked back over the assembled genin before his eyes fell on the figure of Naruto once more. His eyes widened slightly as he gazed at the two specters overlapping the boy's frame. This boy, he has the same power as those two once did. I look forward to seeing where his future leads. Very well, if all of you are so set on accepting the question, then there is only one thing left to say. To the surprise of the genin present, the scowl that had adorned the man's face ever since his arrival vanished and was replaced by a proud smirk. Congratulations on passing the first stage of the Chūnin selection exams. Wait a second, what about the 10th question? Asked Sakura, voicing the question everyone wanted an answer to. There never was a 10th question. Or perhaps you could consider your decision to stay the correct answer to the question. Hold on, so what about the other 9 questions? Were they pointless? Shouted Tamari. You're wrong. The first 9 questions did indeed have a purpose. One that they served quite well. Ibiki paused as he reached up and slowly untied his bandana. They were designed to test your abilities to gather information in an unknown and hostile environment. But just to give you a fighting chance, we had a few Chūnin sit in with you to provide a source to cheat off of. But those who cheated poorly, failed because in the shinobi world, there are times when information is more important than life. Removing his bandana, everyone was treated to the sight of multiple scars and puncture wounds scattered across the surface of Ibiki's skull, and during missions and on the battlefield, people risk their very lives to acquire it. Readying his bandana back to his head, Ibiki looked out over the genin one last time. The first stage of the exams is over. I wish you all luck in the coming stages. No sooner had the words left his mouth than did a black ball crash through the window. Not this again, thought Ibiki as the ball unfurled to reveal a banner with a woman standing in front of it. All right, you brats, listen up. This is no time to be celebrating. I am the proctor for the second exam, Enko Mitarashi. Now follow me to the site of the second exam. Let's go. Silence answered the strange Kunoichi, who had the decency to blush at the awkward atmosphere she had caused. You're early, Enko, again, said the scarred Chūnin as he stepped out from behind the banner. Enko's blush deepened slightly at her partner's words, but that was soon replaced by a look of confusion as she counted the number of remaining genin. What the hell, Ibiki? You let 26 teams pass the exam. I knew this year's first exam was going to be easier, but still, said the exasperated woman as she half-heartedly glared at her partner. Or perhaps we just have a good crop of outstanding genin this year. I'd be worried if I were you, Enko. Your record may be broken this year. Yeah, right. Like that'll happen, said Enko with a dismissive wave of her hand. Anyway, I hope you brats are ready, because the second stage of the Chūnin exams begins in exactly half an hour. You have until then to make it to training ground 44. If you don't make it on time, you automatically fail. Get moving, she shouted before disappearing in a swirl of leaves, leaving behind the genin to run over each other as they tried to get out the door and find the training ground. Team 7, however, was frozen in place. They had been ever since Enko's arrival. Each of them had a single thought running through their heads: of all the people that could have been put in charge of the exam, why the hell did it have to be her? Single quote. The memory of the first time the three genin had been introduced to Enko was still fresh in their minds, as were the nightmares they had about her helping them train for the exams. This is so not going to end well, they all thought before they resigned themselves to their fate and left the room, praying to Kami that they lived through whatever Enko had planned for the second exam. Forest of Death. 30 minutes later. Team 7 stood at the front of the remaining Chūnin hopefuls as they awaited Enko to begin explaining the second stage. The thought that the Hokage had appointed Enko of all people to proctor the exam didn't sit well with them. Kakashi had introduced them to the snake user during their week of training, and to put it frankly, it was hell on earth. Normally someone who was supposed to proctor an exam wasn't supposed to help train any genin for fear of them giving up information or showing favoritism, but Enko, in her own words, said, she really didn't give a fucking shit what a group of people who couldn't shit right without help said. So she assisted in their training for a few days. She didn't really teach them any techniques or skills per se, she mainly worked with Sakura, helping, or forcing, the girl to get over her fangirl crush on Sasuke and focus more on her ninja training. When Naruto and Sasuke had found out that Enko had succeeded, they had both been immensely relieved. Naruto because now they could truly become a team, and Sasuke because he had one less fangirl to deal with, though it didn't make up for the hundreds still out there. Enko checked the sun and saw that her 30-minute time frame had come and gone. Right then, first let me be the first to welcome you brats to training ground 44, or as I like to call it, the Forest of Death. Smirking at the frightened expressions of some of the genin, the special Chūnin opened her jacket slightly, much to the enjoyment of the males, and pulled out a stack of papers. Now, unlike my colleague's test, this one will involve killing. So before I tell you what the exam is, you need to sign these waiver forms. It simply means that I can't be held responsible in the event of your death, nothing too important. The members of Team 7 all gave a collective sweat drop at the women's attitude towards killing and death. I kind of hope this is mostly an act for the exams, like Ibiki, cause if not, Naruto didn't even want to finish that thought. Shortly after, every genin had a form and Enko again opened her jacket a little more, once again to the pleasure of the males. This time she pulled out 2 scrolls, one black, and the other white. Each scroll had a kanji on the outside, one for heaven, the other for earth. Now I'm not one for boring long-winded instructions and details, so I'll make this simple. Each team will receive either a heaven scroll or an earth scroll. Once all the scrolls are passed out, you will report to an assigned gate, where you will enter the forest once I give the signal. Once inside, you all will compete in an all-out scroll battle. Your objective is to reach the tower in the center of the forest within 5 days' time, with both scrolls in your possession. Now the only real rule is that you can't look at the scrolls, other than that anything goes, killing, maiming, torturing, all of that is fair game. The only stipulation against a team passing is that you must have a complete team in order to pass. So one of you dies, you automatically fail. Putting the 2 scrolls back into her jacket, the snake mistress gave a disturbingly cheery smile to the crowd of genin. So, any questions? What happens if we look at the scrolls? Asked a Konoha genin. Anko began chuckling slightly, unnerving many of the genin present. If you open the scrolls, well, let's just say it won't be pretty and leave it that, shall we? Now that that's cleared up, everyone fill out your forms, get your scroll and get to your gate. The exam begins on my command. One by one the teams moved behind the curtained-off booth and received their scrolls. Team 7 stood off to the side watching as each team went through and moved towards their gate. Looks like they're not going to let us know which teams get what scroll, or who's carrying it. Are you surprised? They are testing our abilities in a real-life situation. The less we know about our enemies, the better in their minds, said Naruto with his arms crossed as they watched Gaara and his siblings enter the booth. Yeah, it's just like Ibiki said, Sakura said as she stood up from where she was sitting, we're risking our lives for information. Everyone here is our enemy now, whether they are from Konoha or not. Yeah, said Sasuke with his hands in his pockets, judging by the setup of things, it's safe to assume the 3rd stage will be held in the center tower. It wouldn't make sense to have us go all the way out there only to turn and go somewhere else for the next stage. Sasuke's right, said Naruto, and if the exams follow through with tradition, the 3rd stage will be individual matches between the competitors. Which is why, as soon as we are within the forest and out of sight of everyone, we will drop our little act and reveal our true selves. Finally, said Sasuke with a smirk, this genjutsu act of ours was beginning to get a little uncomfortable. It'll be good to test our skills in the field instead of in a spar. Naruto and Sakura nodded in agreement with their dark-haired teammate, before all 3 of them moved toward the booth to receive their scroll. Handing over their forms, they received a heaven scroll, which Naruto placed in his hip pouch. A few minutes later found the team standing outside of Gate 12, eagerly awaiting the call to start. On the other side of the forest, Team 10 was waiting for the exam to begin as well, though in their own unique way. Choji was desperately counting how many bags of chips he had with him, and begging the proctor to postpone the exam so that he could go get more. Shikamaru was mumbling about troublesome things, but mentally he was determining which teams they should target and how they may stack up against them. Ino's eyes had a far-off look to them as her thoughts drifted back to her fellow blonde. Ever since she had inadvertently ended up on his back, she couldn't get what she had felt out of her head. All of the guys from the academy had been in relatively good shape, with a few exceptions, but Naruto wasn't relatively good. If what she had felt was real, he was fucking ripped. But that wasn't what had gotten to her. No, what she couldn't get out of her head was how warm he was, and how right it felt to have her arms wrapped around him. What the hell is wrong with me? Why can't I get Naruto out of my head? It's not like I like the guy. I love Sasuke. But every time she tried to convince herself of that, what Sakura said before the first exam crept into her thoughts. Was forehead right? Have I allowed my skills to suffer because of a crush? The blonde kunoichi was brought out of her thoughts by Anko's voice coming over the speaker. Alright you brats, the 2nd stage of the Chūnin exams begins now. The gates were flung open as the teams swept into the forest, looking for anyone who might have the scroll they needed. Ino and her team jumped from branch to branch as they moved deeper into the forest. So what's the plan, Shikamaru? Asked Choji. He may have been upset about how many chips he had with him, but he knew when it was time to get serious. Let's head for the tower, said the laid-back genius. We can set up an ambush for when the other teams are weak from the forest and take them out. It's troublesome, but it's our best bet at getting the scroll we need. Actually, Shika, began Ino, I think we should go find Team 7. Huh, why's that, Ino? Asked Shikamaru, though he had a suspicion it had to do with why she was flustered before the first exam. I don't know, I just have this feeling that something isn't right about them, especially Naruto. Didn't you notice that during the first exam, Naruto just sat still for the entire time? He didn't look even the slightest bit nervous, even though he was the dead last at the academy. Yeah, I did notice that. Something is up with him, Sasuke and Sakura, and I want to know what. Alright, we'll look for Team 7, if we're wrong then at the least we'll have a chance to snatch their scroll. Ino and Choji nodded in agreement with the genius and the three changed direction in search of the enigma that was Team 7. This was just the beginning, the real secret will unfold in the next episode. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And hit the bell icon so you'll be the first to see what happens next. See you again in the next journey of Uzumaki Empire 2.0.